All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Long Range Tactics. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, and we're excited that we're actually starting to create episodes again, and we're ahead. I know that there's 4 or 5 in the queue before this one, and that's kind of nice because now we can do an episode and not be rushed to try and post it. And we've hired somebody to push these out there so that it's not me sitting in my inbox in my Google Drive for who knows how long, because a couple of the ones you just listened to were from like June. So it's been one of those things. But we're excited. A lot of new things coming up this next year. There's going to be some cool live podcasts, a couple of the big shows that I'm excited about, where people are going to come down and do some live ones. We've got all the new audio stuff set up for that. It's going to be different. We're going to try and take you guys into the backsides of some of these stories of some of these companies and kind of have fun. But again, we appreciate y'all for listening. If you can, go review the episodes, go review the podcast wherever you're listening. It helps us out, lets us know that you like it, and it's free, and it only takes a few seconds. So we appreciate that. We kind of talked today about reloading and what honestly do you need. There's so many gimmicks and expensive things out there that are great, but is it really going to make you a better shooter, hunter, whatever it is? So we kind of wanted to go down this road. Matt, let's do this real quick. We haven't done it in a couple episodes. Give us one piece of reloading advice that you'd really, or not advice, a piece of reloading equipment that you just can't live without. What is it?
So actually, I want to go a little bit more broad than this, that before the reloading process even starts, 2 things that I tell people that they absolutely have to have before they venture down the reloading path. 1 is an accurate rifle with a good chamber, and 2 is a chronograph. So those 2 things, I'm gonna stick with those 2, are hard and fat. Like that's the line. If you don't have those 2 things, don't even think about reloading.
Yeah, because most of the like factory shit nowadays shoots phenomenal. I mean, 6.5 Creed, you almost can't go wrong with it. But I guess I should have worded the question differently. Out of all the reloading shit that you bought, out of like your presses, your dies, everything, what has been the biggest investment that's been the best for you? I guess I should say that. I need to change that.
Okay, so man, that's hard to quantify. Hear me out on this. I believe in reloading stuff nowadays because there's a lot of really good, expensive stuff. You either get results or your time back. So I'm going to say one of my favorite pieces of equipment that I have right now is that Henderson powered 3-way trimmer. Trims, chamfers, deburrs. So like that, but that's because it provides awesome results and saves me a ton of time. So, and then my results oriented part would be the FX-120i and auto throwers that I have behind me. So I've got a V3 and a V4 and one with the Ingenuity. Perfect powder measurements to the kernel of powder. So 0.02 of a grain. So that would be my best investment for results. And because I know what I'm getting when you get that. A lot of the other methods of throwing powder aren't exact. That's exact.
Right. Yeah, we asked this in the group the other day, what are you guys using to reload? And there was a lot of people, using a lot of different things. And I think at the end of the day, when I was at Barnes, we just used rock chuckers and we used RCBS. They worked. They did awesome stuff. Now I have an FX. Other side. If you're watching on YouTube, I have an FX behind me. I use it. My two charge masters, the way I have them programmed, will almost run circles around it. But I slowed the FX down to make sure that it threw exactly the same every time. Now, the Charge Masters throw really well. I've ran both of them and then dumped them into the FX to just double check everything every so often, and they throw great. I've done straws. I've done the upgrades to the RCBS Charge Masters. Now, I think one of the big things that I want to talk about real quick is I love my Charge Masters, and there's ways to program them. People think, oh, this is the way I got it, and this is the way it has to be. If you go on YouTube and you learn more about your Charge Masters, you can put straws in them. You go to McDonald's and get one of those big straws. There's different ways to speed your Charge Masters up and keep them, consistently throwing what you're going to do. Are you going to save a whole bunch? Are you going to get teeny groups going from a Charge Master to an FX. No, you're not. I don't think so. But you got to decide what you want to invest in. The Henderson trimmer I know is phenomenal. I've heard nothing but good about it. I noticed that Hornady just released one that looks freaking identical to it. So that one's kind of a touchy subject, I think. But one of those things that I think, and I preach it all the time, how to get out of the reloading room faster and onto the range is the biggest thing. So I think Matt kind of hit that nail on the head is, what can get you out faster. I have Franklin, that new coaxial press. I'm not that impressed with it, to be honest with you. And probably because I don't really know how to run it. I've just thrown it up on my stand and away I've gone. But I just, for some reason, keep going back to my rock chucker. So my rock chucker is definitely probably one of my favorites. Now everybody goes out there and buys the 419 presses and all that fancy shit, but I don't. You don't need it. Makes you
No,
look.
so I get in this conversation a lot with guys that so you don't need it, but there is something to be said for having nice stuff. And that's what I tell people, like the sack dies, sack press, the Area 419 stuff. Like I have a bunch of different stuff, right? But like there's that level of minimal return on investment, but it's like just buy it because you want nice things. Like, and that's fine. People buy nice trucks and nice cars and things because they want something nice. Does that car truck do anything more than a cheaper one? Well, not really, but how does it make you feel? Like, hey, good for you, man. Like you have a good investment. That piece of gear, whatever you bought is nice, and roll on. So there's something to be said for that too. Like I have a bunch of expensive stuff. I load on a Forester coax that I've had for 4 or 5 years, and that thing's been rock solid. So that's one of my favorite presses. But I have a Dillon 750 set up and decked out with all the different feeders and yada 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 for pistol and doing rifle stuff too. But I do mainly all my rifle stuff on the Forester coax. So it's the same principle as your rock chucker, really single stage press, swappable dies, and away you go. But the sack press is amazing. I got to play with one of those, and the Aeronaut 419 press is awesome as well. Obviously, you're getting something pretty expensive. Both of those do things that I don't necessarily need them to do. Like the turret thing, I don't find myself needing that because I can just swap dies anyway, so I don't have an issue with that. But hey, if you like nice stuff, buy it, pay for it. If you want to use cheap stuff, I mean, you get what you pay for a lot of times. So I've seen some very low quality dies create some massive headaches when another $20 could have bought you something that's not going to give you a massive headache and cost you more time and money. So I don't know about you, but I told myself when I started reloading even pistol a long time ago, well over probably 15 years ago, just starting with 9mm, I wanted to make the very best ammo I could possibly make. And so that was the path that I went down. I didn't want to waste my time, energy, and money on making crap or stuff that was good enough. No, I wanted to make the very best stuff that I could. And I wanted to control everything as well as I could so the results were the same, consistent results. So, and that's taught me a lot. I didn't just get into it haphazardly, however that you say that, half-assed, and throw spaghetti on the wall and see what stuck. So and I learned a lot, and I learned a lot by asking people that I know got good results, not the old timers at the gun show that will tell you to use some old powder and throw 2 scoops in and then that thing will shoot half an inch, which that doesn't work out like that. So yeah, I have heard my number of stories and seen a number of social media posts when it comes to that stuff too.
Yeah. Doing it religiously and doing it for a job for so many years, there were a lot of things. There were a lot of times we could make shit shooting the .1s, and we're like, dude, I don't know how it's doing it. Like SDs and ESs were over 100, but it would shoot a .1. I'm like,
Yep.
what? Like it makes zero sense to why this rifle is shooting the way it is. But at the end of the day, it's like I think the rest of us have more issues. And I asked this question in another group. I'm like, okay, what's your biggest issue? And almost every single one of them said wind. It's understanding the wind. So would you measuring down to the kernel, would that get you more impacts, or would you really understanding what your rifle does in a 5-mile-an-hour wind, 10-mile-an-hour wind? I mean, everybody kind of goes down rabbit holes when it comes to a lot of this stuff. Like, oh, I've got to weigh, that was forever. I've got to weigh my brass. I've got to have my primers have to be this, they have to be that, and there's so much of that you could still win matches. There's guys winning matches with factory ammo now. And I think a lot of it comes back to them just understanding their rifle and understanding their drop. And
So the factory ammo thing, to a point, I don't believe that any 2-day match has been like what I do, the PRS stuff. Any 2-day match has been won quite a long time with factory off the shelf ammo. There's some boutique ammo companies, say like Eagle Eye or Trace or stuff like that are quote unquote making factory quote unquote boxed ammo, but that's small stuff. I could do that. They use factory new brass, they prime it themselves, they powder it themselves, bullet, jump out. That whole recipe is theirs, and it's small batch stuff. I don't really consider that factory ammo, but I know those companies have done very well and have picked up wins of different sorts. So I guess you could say it's factory ammo. It comes from a company. I don't, but it's not like a Federal or Barnes or Hornady or any of the other ones. I just haven't seen that in quite a while in my game.
I mean, I know a lot of the NRL hunter guys are using factory because it's not your targets are a little bit larger and you don't have a lot of the issues. But
Oh man, I can't even say that anymore. I can't even say that anymore. So the average target size for NRL hunter has shrunk significantly in the last year. I mean, we were shooting those little prairie dog targets out to like 6 something, and which is even in a 2-day PRS match is incredibly small. So I mean, that's about a minute. And they're tall and skinny, so you don't get any wind. So I can't even say that the targets are big anymore. Or large to size. I mean, comparative now that they're just kind of shrinking down to be gas gun size, or gas gun, precision rifle match, race gun size targets and distances now. So the average engagement pushes further. The target sizes are small. Like it's the same stuff, to be honest, and you got to figure it out on the clock. I will say that I do see more factory ammo during these matches because you get away with not having to do the power factor. It's null and void. But I will tell you, lots of custom 6.5 creeds, lots of 25 caliber stuff. So it's like 25 creed is becoming pretty popular. But there's no factory ammo for that I'm aware of for the 25s yet. We may see something come a specific time in January, but I don't know.
I've heard about that from multiple sources. I mean, they just wanted to just release the ATIP for the 25 cal.
Yep.
So that's going to be interesting to say the least. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of new stuff coming out. When I started reloading back in 2000, a long time ago, I remember I could afford the Lee set. I could afford the power. You had the little beam scale. You got the little set that came in a thing, and I thought I was Captain Shit when I got that thing because I could reload my 223 and I could go shoot at targets with it and everything else. And we all knew that was a great starting point, but the RCBS stuff was just a cut above with making sure everything felt better, the press was built better, the dies between RCBS and Redding and everything were better. Better than the Lee dies. Now I still have Lee dies and they work okay, but they're not the same. I still keep it for my pistol stuff. If I'm just gonna go shoot a piece of steel, I don't care if it's loaded on Lee. I know a lot of people still use those progressive Lees for their pistol stuff, but I tried to upgrade and I went to the Charge Masters and I went to the Rock Chucker and I just slowly upgraded, but and a lot of people might agree with me. And then I went to the FX scale and I went to the other things and I did a few tests, like, hey, is this going to make me shoot better than this type of thing? And I didn't test it quite deep enough, but it didn't really make me, shoot, like days over what I was shooting before with that rifle and that load. I guess, back to your point, like if that, and that's the thing, like about the Area 419, that quote unquote, that big press that they sell. It's not, yeah, it's not really a turret press because you have to lock each station in.
Mm-hmm.
So and they sell it like that. But people, it's kind of a flex for them. Hey, I got a zero press, I got this, and you know what? Great, they're loading shit and they're spinning good stuff. But it's amazing, and I'm not going to bring it up who said what, but it's amazing between some of these brass companies and some of these high end uh, die makers. Like they're fighting big time within the industry because some of these dies just aren't being good with some of the brass. And it's hard when you've got like the Petersons, the Alphas, the ADGs, the Hornadies, everything's a little bit different. Like when we chamber with an alpha brass or alpha reamer and they try to use it in, just standard stuff, they have issues a lot of times with fire forming or however they're getting the shoulder set back and different things. So there's a lot of variables that come into, if you're going to run a custom chamber, you need a custom die type thing. And we're starting to see more and more of that. But
So,
there's some holes to go
on
down.
on that topic, the one thing I have seen between die makers is different dimensions to size the base. So, and I've helped a couple shooters work through this issue where you've heard of the clicker. Hopefully, people listening, and maybe you've heard of a clicker. So, a clicker is where your primary extraction, when you lift the bolt, that initial cam, and then it clicks to remove that case. Like that case is basically stuck in there because the back end swells and seals itself to the actual chamber, and it's almost at the mouth of the chamber. So if you imagine that towards the end closest to you of that chamber, where the kind of the mouth is, it swells and it sticks. The brass is sticky and it'll stick to that side wall. And there's a couple reasons for it. But I helped a few shooters diagnose why their resized brass was doing that. Once fired, not an issue, but their subsequent firings on all different types of brass were different. And a couple of them, the sizing dies they were using were a bigger specification than another brand. So I said, hey, switch brands. It doesn't matter what the brand was, irrelevant, but they would size at different dimensions. So you kind of have to keep that in mind too, is if you're having some issues, maybe swap brands of dies and you might cure your issue. I actually use a lot of small base dies, if you can believe that, and not because the chamber's bad. Gas guns really like small base dies. They really do. They function crazy good with small base dies, whereas a normal sizing die just won't do it for you. It doesn't constrict that brass down at the base enough at the web to make it feed well. So that's something I do. So my 6.5 Creed, my gas gun brass is all small base. Every single piece of 223 I've ever loaded has been with a small base without issue. The brass will fail other places before it'll fail at that web. So I haven't had an issue with that. And I've actually created a small base die when I shot 6x47, and I had a chamber that was not good. And that's why I prefaced this whole conversation with make sure you've got an accurate rifle with a good chamber, or else your loading stuff is just going to compound and really drive you nuts. And if you find yourself battling that part, then you really have to contemplate just stop spending your time and money on reloading. Either shoot factory for the life of that barrel, or get it rebarreled. Like that's it. Don't go any further.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point there, the PRCs were super well known for the bolt click. And that's where a lot of people ask, well, what is this AW2? It's the Alex Wheeler two spec that he created with Hornady to make sure that bolt click went away because the PRCs were very well known for it. And a lot of people have that issue with small base dies in like the ARs, because a lot of times your gas system isn't timed just right, and it's usually trying to extract too soon. And there's just
Yep.
so many variables in those ARs, and if you are having issues in that AR, Matt hit that nail on the head. Like a small base die is perfect for an AR. I have two different dies for my 223, whether I'm shooting my precision rifle 223 or my AR, and they both work great. But I had mine's 223 wild match chamber, and I want it perfect for that. And I use different brass for it than I use for everything else. And dude, it's amazing to me. People call into like Straight Jacket and they're like, "Hey, my brass won't fit." Well, where'd you get is the brass new? Oh no, my buddy shot it out of his
Yeah.
chamber.
Can't do that. Can't
No,
do that.
no.
And when I worked and did testing for Howland stuff and started playing with different chamberings and stuff, and I quickly learned that was the case, that just because it was even the same, like pretty close together serial numbers of factory rifles, there's still chamber differences. And what I learned pretty quickly is I don't want to use fired brass from one rifle and attempt to put it in another. It's not going to work out well. The dimensions are always going to be different in some way, whether it's run out or headspace or something is not going to be exactly the same, and you're going to be fighting it. So I have a rule, like per barrel that I have for any rifle that I have, hunting rifle, match rifle, it doesn't matter, 220. I just buy a chunk of brass, whether it's 500 pieces or 1,000 pieces or whatever it is, and that brass stays married to that barrel, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got like 3 or 4 6.5 creeds now that we shoot, we loan out, we do everything. And I'm very anal retentive when it comes to, no, this brass has to stay with this rifle. Now, granted, some of our new or some of our new like educational rifles that we teach classes with, they're all done with the same reamer. So it isn't as bad. But, if you're trying to shoot it in a factory Savage and then you're trying to send it to a match chamber, you're going to have nothing but issues.
Yep.
Shoulders aren't going to be right. Now once you fire for them at once, it might be okay, but it's not worth the headache. That especially if you're going to buy 300 or 400 pieces of brass, just go get something new and go with the life of that. And a lot of brass, depending on how much you shoot, will if you take care of it, you anneal it right, you do everything, will outlast a lot of the guns. And that's why a lot of people call us and they'll order 2 of the exact same barrel. I want this barrel, I want this reamer, I want this, I want everything exact. And then they can use the brass from one to the next when they do it. But
So, and what I will tell you about that is, you, Sir Jacket spun up 2 6.5 creeds for me, straight taper barrels, 2 different brands, right? And those chambers were damn near identical. I couldn't. There was even with the dummy rounds that I made, the chambers, like all the sizing, like everything was. I didn't have to touch a sizing die. I didn't have to do it. It was damn near perfect. Like I can't measure the difference. So, um, there's something to be said there for that too. Could I get away with using one batch of brass and another? Yeah, I probably could, but I'm not going to do that. That's just me, and that's how I keep track of how many firings are on brass too. But I use it for different. I'm not a one and done person or two done person. I try to reuse that brass for that entire length of that barrel. Then it becomes practice brass or junkers or whatever. Goes in the scrap bucket, which sucks, but that's just kind of life because it is brass is an expendable. People think it'll last your lifetime. It doesn't. It's an expendable. It's just like brake pads on a car. You burn through them. It's just gonna happen. Accept the cost.
yeah. And we got to understand, when a lot of, I made a habit let's kind of go through that for a sec. So let's see, you open up your brand new box of brass. What are some of the first things that you do with it? I know I'll go through and just bump all the shoulders to get consistent neck tension on them. I won't do a full length side, but I'll just bump them all to try and get that. What do you do on new brass that you just received?
2 things. I'll run a mandrel through it and expand the necks and make sure they're perfectly round. So like 6.5 Creed brass. I just did a new batch of 500 of Peterson 6.5 small rifle primer brass. Right. So 500 pieces. I immediately took it out the same day I got it. Ran a mandrel through it, 262 mandrel, and then I put it on the Henderson and trim chamfered it. And it was just enough to break that kind of sharp edge that's on it for manufacturing because they don't come trim or chamfered. You're not going to trim anything off it. It's already at minimum. I just want to clean up the case mouth is pretty much what I'm doing. And then it goes to prime and I load it. That's my new brass right there. I don't put it through a sizing die because usually it's either at minimum or it's under minimum from what I've seen, especially expensive brass. So I will tell you though, some brands of big name factory brass runs a little big. So yes, I would put some of the brands through a sizing die to make sure they're all uniform. But like expensive brass like Peterson, Alpha, ADG, any of those is damn near SAMI minimum. So I don't see the need to do that with those.
Well, we all know that, second round firings are the most accurate anyway, because now it's pretty much formed to your chamber identically. Now, that was one nice thing that Alpha did when they did the reamer and the brass, because the tolerances were so damn tight together, and some people
Yep.
are, dude, I got your 6 dasher and it's tight with my X company's brass. I'm like, well, it was designed for this. It'll work. You're just going to have to
Yeah.
do a little bit of work to make it fit into that. But man, they're awesome, awesome reamers. And So let's work down the brass a little bit. We talk about annealing. Do you anneal what, every third firing?
Nope, every firing on an amp annealer, and I have in my phone a list of all the amp codes that I've used with different brass or talked to other people, or got the codes from them, because you can contact them. They'll give you the code or an updated code. They have a list and everything. But I use an amp annealer. That was something I invested in. I used to use a flame annealer, one of the Annealy's ones. But I will tell you, if you're doing large batches of brass, that's the flame annealing is okay to do in my eyes. If you're doing small batches like under 100 pieces, I wouldn't bother. Um, I would just either shoot it and run it out, or just wait to have enough to do a couple hundred pieces. That way, it's consistent. The amp is consistent every time. It's induction, and it knows, and it does the same thing every single time. Flame annealers don't. And if you have a flame annealer at home and you're using a small bottle on it, and in a small bottle, I mean one of those benzo bottles or a Coleman green or whatever it is, don't do that. Run a hose with a big propane cylinder so you're getting consistent bottle pressure. So that the temperature will change on you as that bottle goes down, or the temperature changes because the pressure is different. Now you're thinking, well, how can that be? There's no regulator, it's a nozzle. So if you have a big bottle that's consistently throwing out the same flame as you're going, that's much more consistent results with that annealing, that flame one, unless you have some sort of regulator built into it, so it's spitting out the exact same gas pressure. But I did start on one of those, and it worked decent. But you roast some brass in the process, which I'm not a fan of. I don't lose any pieces of brass with the amp. It just goes. I will invest in amp mate, but I kind of space out and watch movies on my reloading room TV, and just anneal brass and melt my fingertips off. Um, but that's one of the byproducts of annealing brass. You'll find out is you don't have fingertips or fingerprints anymore. Hard to do form fours with that. Um, but yeah, I do anneal every firing, and I only do every firing just so I know everything's consistent. That's it. And there's really no negatives to it other than loss of time.
Yeah, and that's my thing. I don't have time. I don't have. I mean, even back before we knew about annealing and all that, we never did it, and we got consistency. But we noticed that our cases just weren't lasting as long because you're constantly firing it, you're sizing it, you're pulling the case apart, and that's the biggest thing that you're trying to do there. And most cases do they crack, up in the shoulder junction or up in the neck, and that's the worst place for them, and that's where you anneal, right? So that's one of the things for me. I just don't have that time. So I do mine every third firing, and it seems to work okay. I mean, I don't have any issues. And if you have more time like Matt or whatever, I mean, that's great. But you guys also listening need to figure out what works for you, and do some tests. Does it help you to anneal every time? There's some different things you can go down. I know some of us are just like to go out and shoot, and others go down freaking deep, dark rabbit holes of what case lube to use, and do, neck tensions and all that kind of stuff. But I'm telling you, like, you're going to want to anneal to get consistent neck tensions and to keep everything as consistent as possible on this brass. I mean,
And of all the different stuff I load, Cole, I cannot remember the last time I scrapped a piece of brass due to a neck or shoulder crack or anything like that. I always get rid of them due to either I think it just needs to be replaced and I just buy new stuff anyway, or the primer pockets have no tension. And I have one of those little primer ballistic tools, I think is the primer pocket go no go gauge. That thing's a lifesaver. I'll just sit down like every 6, 7 firings. The Alpha, I cannot get that stuff to wear out. It's ridiculous. The Peterson, after a while, it will give up the ghost. Probably 10, 12 firings of 6.5 Creed, and it's time to retire it. But that's a lot of shooting if you think about it.
right. Yeah.
That is a lot of shooting. And because when I'm done with that match brass, it goes to practice brass or hunting or something like that. And that brass still gets kind of used and abused. If it'll run, I'll small base it one time, and then it'll usually work in a non-match setting, to where, like, if I have an issue with it, it's not gonna really ruin my day, you know.
Right.
Um, but yeah, the primer pockets for me go immediately. And some cartridges, this is why I don't push cartridges hard at all. I got out of that mindset right when I first started reloading rifles with 223. Lots of bad things happen when you start running on that ragged edge trying to chase speed. It's not good. And the brass will show you exactly what bad looks like. So, yep.
Yeah. If you're trying to get 6 Creedmoor speeds out of a GT, why didn't you just build the freaking Creedmoor? That's it always makes me scratch my head. Like if you want something and you want to hit a certain speed, build the cartridge that you want to push. Now, and I talked to Alpha about this when they did that OCD, is like, well, you can push it way over pressure. And I'm like, why though? I mean, why are you trying to make a cartridge do something it's not? And they're like, yeah, we know, but people still keep doing it. It makes no sense on why they're doing what they're doing. And I get it. Some of us are hard headed as hell, but it just doesn't make any sense because you're taking half the life out of your brass and everything else. And I know that OCD brass is the shit, but it's not cheap.
It is. It's not, but you definitely get. It's one of those things you get what you pay for. And then what do you? So let's hit on that real quick. What do you get when you pay that much money for brass? You get consistency, where that brass, the internal volume, is spot on every single time, so your load data doesn't change, and that's one huge benefit. Versus cheaper brass, the internal volume is not all the same. The way that brass is drawn, and two, the brass the composition of the brass, that metallurgy is better and more consistent in that more expensive brass. So you can get more firings out of it. Its size is easier. The neck tension is more even. It'll take annealing a lot better and more consistently. So that's what you're paying for, that consistency and that longevity. Whereas like, federal Hornady 65 brass, I might get a couple firings out of it, but that more expensive Peterson Alpha 80G, any of those, you get a lot more firings out of it and a lot more consistent results.
Yeah. You get what you pay for sure. And then, a funny thing is that I always laughed about, and you can't get primers are hard to get anymore, but everybody was buying the match primers. And I learned a long time ago that all they are is just a little bit more consistent lot of 210s or 205s.
I don't even know if it's that, like, if it's measurable, like the actual consistency. Like, sure, I guess use them if you want to feel better. But man, like say BR4s, the bench rest small rifle primer versus a CCI 450 small rifle magnum. I just use the 450s. They're like, right now I think they're about what, 2/3 the cost. And then like the results, I can't measure the differences. They shoot the exact same. I haven't had any change in results. And then also that setting where I would be able to articulate that, I would need to shoot hundreds of rounds and collect that data and compare the two. And I just don't think it would be justify the cost difference. Now, if you want to buy them just because it makes you feel warm and fuzzy, by all means. It's not going to negatively impact you, but are you going to see a benefit of that? Probably not. In practical terms.
Right. Yeah, that's, and honestly anymore, it's whatever you can find, between powder and primers. Powder's finally coming back a little bit, but
Yeah,
damn,
expensive. Holy crap!
I miss the old prices, man. I miss the old prices. I wish I would have stockpiled on some of that crap. But
I finished a jug of H4831 because that's what I use for my match load for 6.5 PRC. An 8-pound jug of H4831 from a hardware store that was $180.
yep,
That one hurt. That same jug is like almost $400 right now. That hurt.
yep, double. Yeah, it's freaking absolute bullshit. But what do? That's the problem. Is all those powders are done overseas, and then they ship them in, and then they make them into the powder that you want. And we could have another podcast on that because there's a lot of stuff that people don't understand about powders and primers. That's kind of crazy. It'll blow your mind. But next thing, question. So after you fired a couple, how often do you clean your brass?
Every firing. And I don't wet tumble. I had a wet tumbler that I tried to use on pistol. It was more of a pain in the ass than anything, and I didn't want to deal with the distilled water. So I got rid of that thing, gave it to a friend. I just dry tumble everything. I have 2 of those big Lyman black turbo tumblers full of either walnut or corn cob. It doesn't matter to me. I just throw them in there and I let them run pretty much overnight. And I wake up and I put them in the tumbler separator thing and then blow them off with compressed air to get the dust off of them. And then away I go. Like I that's the one thing I do the lazy way. And yeah, I leave the primers in them. I don't deprime or side. I don't touch any of that. I just fire it, put it straight in those tumblers. Away we go.
See, here's one thing I want you guys to think about. And I've seen this multiple times. If you've got a bore scope and you do that, keep an eye on your barrel because I know there's a lot of times people will do that and the corn cob shit gets stuck in the bottom and you don't realize it and you shoot it down your barrel and it will do some shit to your barrel. So you've got to be no matter how you clean, you just got to make sure whatever media, whatever you're using, comes out. Stainless steel pins. I've seen people shoot stainless steel pins down their barrel, and it looks like somebody took a wood chipper to the inside of their barrel, and there's a reason why. I still pin, but I don't shoot as much as I do anymore, so it isn't that big of a deal. But the nice thing about the pins is I do have a decapping die, so I push it out. I want it to clean out my primer pocket, and I want it to clean through my flash hole. That's just me, and the only thing that'll go through a flash hole is those pins. But to each their own. Everybody does their thing. My biggest thing is I make sure that I lay them out and I put them in my oven just barely warm to make sure they're 100% dry, and then I look at all of them and make sure the pins
See,
aren't in there sideways, because that's what happens.
see, that's way too much work for me. My volume is way more than that, and which is, hey, this is weird timing, by the way, which always happens this way. One of my group chats, my Reno guys, I don't know, this guy just posted about wet tumbling and how he's this is crazy, this timing. I can't even make this up. He said, I must say, I didn't know what I was missing out on when I wasn't wet tumbling brass. Shiny. And it's very beautiful looking jewelry quality brass. And I just replied to this and said, too much of a pain in the ass for something that doesn't have an advantage. So that's my take on it. I've tried it, and I'm sorry, I can't do it. And especially the steel pins, man. The steel pins kind of scare the shit out of me just for that reason. And I don't have the time to make sure all that is out of there. And man, the last thing I want is powder and a brass pin in there. And I also don't touch primer pockets at all. I don't uniform them. I just punch that primer out and load the new one in. I've never ever touched primer pockets ever. And my results are solid. My numbers are solid. I don't think that I've seen a lot of bad happen with people chasing primer pockets with the uniformers or those like spinny cleany blade things. Like I've seen a lot of things that just aren't, I don't know, just not good. And I've seen a lot of loose primer pockets caused by that, just enlarging that pocket. So I think you're muted.
Yeah, I am. So, one of those things though is as you go deeper on a primer pocket, the old Remingtons had this issue: is the spring would get weaker and weaker, and you wouldn't have consistent, ignition.
Yep.
And that does have a lot. On a
Yep.
lot of these, even on these new actions, you want to change out those springs every few years, depending on how much you shoot and everything else. And as you go deeper on that primer pocket, you're going to get inconsistent ignitions. And that's one nice thing about buying that really high end brass is we can't measure the consistency that, I mean, we can with gauges and stuff, but Alpha's gone through tons and tons of things to make sure the consistency is there. My biggest thing, and one thing that I learned at Barnes, is that flash hole. If that flash hole isn't uniform and if it isn't cleaned out, you're going to get some inconsistency and burn, because it's going to either burn one side. At the end of the day, you're starting a fire. No two fires start the same. One's going to burn this way faster, one's going to burn that way faster. You're just trying to take as much of that inconsistency out of it. But a lot of times you can just kind of, as you size, that decapping pin comes down and it cleans out that hole, good enough to where you're not going to have any issues. But yeah, I mean, I dry tumbled forever with walnut, and I just put a little bit of that shit in it there that sticks to it, and they do. I'll tell you what, the stainless steel pins make them shiny as hell. They are pretty, but it does take more time.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily care about the shininess. I'm okay with a little dull sheen to it. I've never had any issues with sizing or like chambers or anything, having super shiny brass or not shiny brass. So me, as long as it's cleaned and my Sharpie marks are off the brass, that's really all I care about.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think everybody needs to kind of take this and think about it. There's places to spend time, and there's other places to save as much time as you need. And I think a lot of people try to spend so much time on all this, going through every step, that they're not doing what they need to be doing, and they're out there shooting. So let's go into something you had a struggle with the other day after you called me and wanted to do barrel because you're freaking rookie. Hey, if you haven't done this, you haven't been shooting long enough. You screwed up. You accidentally adjust a seating die
Nope,
or something wrong. But
it wasn't my fault. This
oh,
was not my fault. I will show this on video. I will grab this die right now. Hold on, because I want to show you. And I sent you the video. You didn't even watch the video. Okay, so let's give some backstory to this. So I went to the range and confirmed a load on my 6GT rifle and shooting 109 ELDs, 35.9 grains of H4350, alpha brass, CCI 450s, and I usually get 2880, 2900 feet per second. Anywhere that range, I'm comfortable with, and single digit SDs and groups that are half min or better. Well, I shot a 10 round group with this rifle and it was freshly cleaned. That was well over an inch. And I sent you the picture and you're like, yeah, that's not good. And so I was like, something's not right here. This rifle doesn't even have 1,000 rounds on it. I'm nowhere close to even burning out. So what I did is I brought it home. I cleaned it, my normal method. I bore scoped it, looked at everything. Everything looks fantastic. Throat, awesome. No carbon ring. The rifling's nice and sharp. Everything's looks spot on. So what I do is I created a dummy cartridge my way, and you can find my way. Ultimate Reloader did a test that guy from South Africa, Peter, Impact Shooting, he did my way of creating a dummy, which is a fired case, blue Loctite, and the bullet you're intending to use. There's videos on it. You can look it up. We're on my social media as well. I make a dummy round with that current throat, press it in there, let it sit for 5 minutes. I got a nice glued, solid dummy round, write the date on it, and I measured it. Where it was compared to my first dummy round that I did after 100 rounds are fired on that throat. And then also against the ammo that I had loaded and shot previously and for that range day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turns out that my seating depth was longer than it should be. It should be about 90 thousandths longer. So it was only 10 thousandths off the lens, which is not where I want to be. I don't like loading anywhere close to lens. So the 109 ELD and the 110 A-tip love 100 thousandths jump. That's the sweet spot on any chamber cartridge I shot. Those 109 or 110s, 100 thou. And I've got data to prove this. So I was like, wow, that's 90 thousandths. So I compared everything, went back, made a second dummy in case the first one was messed up. It's pretty cheap. And measured it, still the same. So I investigated further with my seating die, and this seating die is the Forster Ultra Seeder, which is a nice die. It's not cheap. Nice, guided, spring-loaded, like it's nice. So what had happened, and if you're watching this on YouTube, the midsection of this die right here, and I did blue Loctite this one, threads on and off of the inner die body, so you can take it apart. Well, that joint had backed out right here. Had backed out enough. So my seating numbers were still the same. On the micrometer was still the same. Was exactly where it was set. But the die body itself had separated. And I sent you the video of it. Hey, that's what happened. I wouldn't have caught that unless I did the backwards steps and figured out where I went wrong in my reloading process. And I caught it and I fixed the issue, and now I know what to look for. I've never seen this happen. Maybe someone else has, but it hasn't happened to me. In the tens and tens of thousands and thousands of rounds that I've loaded pistol rifle, no matter. I've never had that happen, like a die malfunction like that. I don't even call it a malfunction. It's a threaded thing that unthreaded.
Right. So, at Barnes, we were always taught like to consistency is key. And we were always like, oh, this is stupid. The same, trying to measure the same thing over and over. When I load every 10th round, no matter what, because if something changes or I don't load something right, I do that. And that's something that a lot of people do. They'll just set their die and run. And I've seen this at matches where a guy will show up and none of his shit works. Like his ammo doesn't load into his rifle right. And he's like, man, what the hell? And I'm like, that is one of those important things, in my opinion, of just, maybe overdoing it a little bit in some cases. Because yeah, a lot of guys are still into that, oh, I'm going to chase my lands bullshit with that 10 thou off or seating, but all you're going to do is chase your tail around most of the time. I try, there's a node usually between 60 and 100. Another node in most of the ones that I load for, like 60 to 80, and then there's another run right around 100 to 110 or something like that, where it kind of levels itself back out. And then I'm not chasing the rifling, kind of like what you're saying. But I have just made it like my thing, like every 10, I've got caliper sitting there, I've got a micrometer sitting there, I just double check myself always to make sure that nothing's moving, because that's the worst is you get in the middle of a match, or You get out on the side of a mountain, and you're like, shit, none of my stuff works. Like, what the hell's going on? Like, I'd rather take my time there than, other places. But I've tried to become anal retentive with that type of stuff.
Yeah, and I witness mark pretty much all my reloading stuff, especially dies, especially in the progressive. The Dylan with the tool heads, I witness mark everything, like everything, because like running the progressive for whatever reason is really hard on dies. It doesn't matter the lock rings, it doesn't matter the setup of the dies or anything. They back out or they move. It's the nature of the beast. So I witness mark everything. I have like the marks for my seating dies on everything. Witness marked with silver sharpie, and that's why I didn't look for this one. I didn't think it was a problem because I checked my witness mark on my seating depth, and it was right there, spot on. It's just I didn't anticipate the die body itself coming unscrewed. But like I said, it's another thing to watch for. And I've got 3 different sets of digital calipers set up with different comparators on my bench right now, and I've got a couple out in the garage with the Dylan. I have multiple reference points. I save every dummy cartridge with a date on it, so I have multiple data points for that barrel. So like I that's something that I've learned, and I want to talk to you about this too. When we were talking about, hey, what are we going to talk about? It's amazing you have a conversation about a conversation. Um, I don't load big batches of ammo. Some people will, and the only couple times that I've ever done that, it's really bit me in the ass. So for a 2-day match that requires say 200 rounds for the course of fire, I load 250. That's it. I won't go more than that. For a 1-day match, I load exactly 100 because that 1-day match is 100 less. For hunts, I'll load 50. So like the pig hunt with the copper solids I was talking to you about, I only loaded 25 of those solids for California pig. So that's it. I'm not going to load a bunch because I don't want to pull a bunch or have bad ammo or have a barrel that goes out on me, and I've got extra ammo that's loaded that I could have used for something else. That's money that's tied up into these cartridges that's just sitting now when it could have just been left as components. So, and I don't do it.
Yeah, I'll do it with like 223, 300 blackout. Some of that stuff I'll shoot ARs large, but yeah, most of my rifles it's 50 max, and I leave it how it is. But the other cool thing that I've taught people haven't thought about is when you're getting a barrel made, like we at Straight Jacket have got big blanks sitting there of people like burned out barrels and shit. If you can ask your manufacturer, say, hey, would you make me a case gauge out of one of those barrels? Like use the same reamer, use everything, and then you can use one of those for a case gauge as well. Because one of the big issues that I've seen is, your neck's flaring out, or you're pushing your shoulder back because you're camming it over too hard when you're reloading and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of people, if you have a case gauge or something that you can drop a case into every 20 rounds or something to make sure nothing's changed, or when you start reloading again, because man, nothing's worse than you try to load something and it won't fit in the friggin' chamber because
Mhm.
it's off just a couple thousandths.
And
And
that's why I won't load bulk ammo, because these things happen. And the match ammo, luckily I just had to repress it, but I have loaded stuff prior that had the wrong jump, but the wrong way. So I had too much jump, and that this shit wouldn't shoot. So I ended up having to either use it to break in the next barrel or use it for practice or something. So I just like kind of wasted that chunk of change there on that ammo for not the intended purpose. And that's why I won't go load 400 or 500 rounds of something. I just won't do that. Load it per use and keep track of it.
yeah, unless you're shooting like a PRS match, then you'll load 200 rounds or
Is
whatever.
that's it. The most I'll ever load is 250 rounds. That's it. That's all I've ever needed for a 2-day match.
Mhm. Yeah, and then you keep them in bags to know how many firings. I mean, that's a big thing, is how many firings are on that brass, and it's hard for people to keep track of that. But Google Sheets is a good one. Some of these spreadsheets, I I got my ass bit a lot of times when I would put shit on my phone back when. So I started putting it all in a notebook so I can go
Mhm.
back and reference it. But now the notes and everything are transferring over on phones, and you can take pictures with your phone and put it in your notes on your phone, like iPhones like mine. So there's different ways to keep track of that. But, making sure you're keeping track of how many times you fired that brass is a big thing too, because you don't want to be putting once fired brass with 20 fired brass, because you're going to see
No.
some issues. A lot of people will mix that together and then wonder why they're getting such inconsistent results.
Yeah, and the game I play, that one piece of brass now could be the difference between first and fourth place. So I am kind of meticulous on it. So I have storage drawers, like those plastic ones that are, 3 to 5 or whatever, and I'll compartmentalize that with notes in there, hard cards. So I open it up and I can keep track of what, and it kind of moves down. And then my bottom one is all my prepped, prime, ready to load brass, and then it kind of moves down how I need to separate it. So that's one way. And those little drawer things are pretty cheap. You get them at Walmart or whatever, and it's an easy way to go about separating everything. So I've seen some people do bins loose or whatever. Hey, whatever you got to do to keep track of it. And then I keep notes on my phone for everything, and I also have a couple of the notebooks too with stuff I want to keep long term, because anything digital to me is not long term.
Yeah, I go to Walmart and they sell those green army, the plastic army bin can.
Mm.
You can go get you can go get those the little pouches that take the shit out of the air, the
Desiccant.
yeah, something like that. So you drop those in them. But the nice thing about the green cans is they take up narrow and you can stack them super high. So I
So those desiccant packets, the big ones, I don't know what gram they are, 50 or 100, whatever. The big ones, that's what I use for the jugs of powder. So I get a jug of powder, and then I bury one of those in the middle of that powder, put the cap back on, and then it's usually pretty well evenly humidified, if you want to use that word, by the time I go and use it. So that's another thing we can touch on another time. But humidity in powder is a big change in performance. So I mean, people don't realize that. I think, Brian, let's just kind of release an article dealing with this of applied ballistics, dealing with humidity in powder. That's something that I've been dealing with for a long time, because I live in the desert. We don't have humidity here. You don't really have humidity where you're at in Utah either. I think we run about 10 to 20% on average. So that powder is a lot more humid than it is here. And why that matters is time in the hopper. And then as that temperature, or that powder gets older, temperature, humidity, it acclimates differently. So I'm trying to get all that powder as consistent as possible, so the burn rates are the same and the volume that you're throwing is the same. So that's where a lot of the consistency comes in with chamber pressures, is that powder humidity, the moisture content of the powder. So there's a great article about that. Please seek that out. I've blown a few minds with that, and I've been dealing with that for quite a long time. Living in a dry climate, I don't live on the East Coast or Midwest where it's humid. I can't speak to that. But I imagine it's not such a big deal for those guys as it is for us.
Well, like when I can go down a rabbit hole with this, but like the PSR contract, which was the Army sniper contract, those kegs, we had to buy a big humidity semi trailer that all of our powder went in. So we'd store all our powder in just Connexes. And then before a few days before we'd start to load it for like Lapua or whatever, it'd go into this humidity controlled thing that would put so much humidity in it. Then after that, we had so much time to take it out of that and go in to actually start loading. And if it didn't get loaded within a certain amount of time, it had to go back out and get acclimated again. And that was the only way that we could control ESs and SDs over a 40,000 part 338 Lapua run, H1000. Everybody's like, oh, H1000 is temp stable, blah, blah, blah. But dude, the humidity factors were huge in that. The other thing is we had to seal them. So we had to use a
Yep.
special case sealant. So that, and then we had to test them after that in a controlled environment in the rainforest and different things to see if any of that ever got in and affected that. But we also found out that we couldn't load that ammo during a thunderstorm. Like it was crazy. Like a thunderstorm with the humidity that a storm brings in would change our ES's velocity and everything on that round. Like we could go down rabbit holes talking about this stuff because it's crazy. And please don't take this into account when you're just loading, a few for just to go out shooting with the buddies. But this is what we had to deal with on big contracts and giant numbers. But it does, things like that do have a big, where you store your powder, where you store your primers. Is the temperature consistently changing in there? That stuff will all have variables on that stuff for sure.
Yeah, this is going to sound bad, but I live in Vegas. So the temperature swings here are kind of gnarly, and it's way too hot in the summer, and it's very dry. So I try to control this as much as possible with how I store things. So, and I load in my house. As you see, I'm in my reloading room in my house because I've got air conditioning, and it'll be well over 110 in my garage during the summer. Even spring and fall. It's way too hot out there to load. You can say whatever you want to me. A space air conditioner doesn't help my cause at all. It like keeps your knees cold, and that's about it. And so I load everything inside. I'll do the progressive stuff outside, but I won't do it during the summer. But with that, I try to control all those temperature and humidity variables as much as I can with my reloading components, for sure. And
Yeah.
just because of exactly what you said. And it does make a difference. It does make a noticeable difference. And if you take as much data as I do, and record everything off a chronograph every time you go shoot, really, you'll see it. You will see it, and you'll notice when things change.
It's like just throwing your ammo up on the dash of your truck on the way to the range. It's going to mess with you a little bit.
Yep.
It is, you know. And at Barnes, we had these metal cabinets that we bought, and then we put those humidity anti water things in them to help just keep them at one temperature and stuff. And I'm not saying y'all have to go do that, but it's just something to think about when you're doing it. So I'm using the RCBS stuff. You're using the Forester stuff. I've got that inline fab. That is actually one of my new favorite things that I bought. I bought that inline fab. Yeah, that stand, and they actually have things that mount off to the side now, so that
I got the wings.
kick shit. Yeah, so you can kick stuff off. You can. I've got to buy those. Those are one of my next purchases. But that one's a good one. Shout out to Inline Fab. No, they don't sponsor us. We had to pay for these, but they're definitely they're a good investment in it. So hopefully we can.
The wall racks are awesome too, man. Like the wall racks, the die racks, and different stuff like that. I got them inside the house and out in the garage. Awesome. And actually, for what you get, the price, like, it's pretty low. Like, honestly, the quality is awesome. They give you everything you need, and it's not like super expensive stuff. So yeah, shout out to Inline, because they've definitely saved my ass a number of times with that.
And then, making sure you're using the right. I've seen this so many times to where they don't use the right shell holder, and they start tearing the case, the rim off the end of the bottom of the case. They can't get extraction right. Shit's happening. Little teeny things like that are really going to set you. Having a good set of calipers.
Several.
Huge. Yeah. I have a couple, and batteries, dude, go on Amazon and stockpile batteries, because they go, you'll go.
Oh man. Yeah.
Imagine.
The 50 pack of the cheapies, and I just spilled a bunch on the ground. But yeah, no. And they're within arm's reach, because those calipers, for whatever reason, burn through batteries like crazy.
Yeah. And I always tell people, have a good inch. You can go on Amazon, they're 1 inch or 2 inch or however, and it helps you just make sure you're resetting it to 0 at every time. The other thing is a good comparator. Like, I use the Hornady set to go to my ogive, measure off the ogive, especially on match bullets, or you're going to get too many variables.
The SAC comparator is awesome too. It has different inserts and stuff. I have a Hornady one. I have it's either Mighty or Wooden, one of those two, and then I've got the SAC one. And man, they all do the same thing. The SAC one is definitely a step up.
Yeah, they build some good stuff, I've heard. I don't have very much of their stuff, but so what else are we missing? So we've got the powder throwers, we've got trays. One thing that I'm putting this out there, and not everybody does it, and it's something that a lot of people don't think about. But when I put my tray out, I put every shell down that hasn't been reloaded. And there's 3 reasons why I do this, and it was just the way I was taught. Number one, it shows me that there's a primer in that case. Number two, I know that since it's upside down, it doesn't have powder in it, because I don't know how many times I've seen people double charge shit. And man, you will get Western, especially if you put pistol powder or very fast burning powder, you're going to blow something up. So I do this. So if I know it's down, I know there's a primer in it, I know there's no powder in it. Once it's turned up, I put powder in it and I set it in there. Now I know 100% that I have powder in it. That's just the way that I run things, and it gives me the peace of mind that I'm not going to screw something up, because you got shit on your head from work, you got shit on your head from family stuff, everything else going on, and that's just one of the ways that I keep things kind of straight. And as you guys and gals start reloading and doing everything, you'll have your own way to do it. And I just see a lot of people, they'll put the freaking shell in there and they'll pick it up, and there's powder coming out the end because they forgot to put the freaking primer in it. It just helps get rid of some of those variables. That's just my take on it.
So you hit on something good, and it's I don't go quite to that level, but when I'm prepping brass, loading brass, whatever step in the process is, I complete that chunk. I will not leave and go do something else and leave something half done or partially done. No, it's completed, or I don't do it. I have the time to devote to whatever that step in the process is. And if I'm going to load, I'm going to powder 150 rounds, however 100 rounds, whatever it is, I powder all of those, and I am done when I am done. I will not leave something half done at all. Case prep, same way, because I don't know how many times in life you start something and you go, what was I doing? Where was I at? Then and reloading is not something that I'm willing to take that risk for.
Right.
So 100%. And I like your step there. That's a good one. Um, but and like the wife and I reload. We load, do brass prep and load for 2 shooters, and so when we work together, we have distinct things we are taking care of. We don't cross what we're doing. That way, there's no contamination of what someone was doing or doing something twice or not doing something at all. So, yeah, for sure.
It gets Western, man. You put too much
hmm
pistol powder in something, you better be having safety glasses and shit on. But
pistol actually scares me more than rifle, because a lot of the rifle cartridges that I shoot, well, all of them, I don't. I use a powder, bullet, and case combination that's damn near at case fill. Not compressed, but so if I do have extra powder in there, like you're not gonna be able to see the bullet, and
well,
and that's a good indicator of double filling.
one of the big issues, though, and a lot of people don't think of this, is underfilling a cartridge is actually in a lot of
Yeah,
cases worse than overfilling because
I've
it
seen that.
creates a whole bunch of pressure in there. So if you don't fill one up enough, man, you can create a bomb in a hurry. So you just
hmm
got to be careful with that kind of stuff. And again, just coming up with your own version of how you reload is everything. And then, I will take a lot of times I'll just take it, powder it, and go right to my reloading or right to my press and put a bullet in it so that I don't ever spill. I've seen so many times where somebody have a whole nice pretty tray and they do something and hit it and shit's everywhere. And guess what? You got to reload the whole freaking tray again because you don't know which one has more powder in it. There's too many variables there. So coming up with a pattern and then sticking with it is everything to me. And it keeps me honest for sure. Trying to think what else we need to hit on. Dyes, just find don't go the cheapest.
Dies or dies.
Yeah.
I
Don't
mean,
buy the shit you can buy though, because you're gonna get stuff stuck. A big one. This is one that I've seen forever, and I know I can see some in the background of yours, but Hornady One Shot, be careful with it. Case lube, it'll do one of two things. It'll make shit come in and out really nice, or it'll stick stuff like a son of a bitch.
mhm.
It always does. So you got to be careful. I there for a while I did that lanolin mixture. I've still got some in underneath, that home brew shit you can
Yeah.
do, but and trying to get that stuff off. Holy crap. It almost takes more time because then you gotta go try to wash all the lanolin and all the oils out of it. It runs, dude, it'll put a freaking Saint Bernard in
Butter.
a cat house, but it
So I use the one shot because it's easy, but also like I have my process down where that stuff doesn't negatively affect me. I have an in and out tray. I throw like 20 cases in this in and out tray. I'll give it a light dusting, roll them around, give it a light dusting, and that's more than enough. And I think I've seen a lot of people have more issues because of over lubing than under.
mhm.
I mean, the under you get a stuck case or no lube because I've definitely dealt with that before. I mean,
Or you do too many and you let it sit for too long
yep.
and then you get stuck. Or you've got a dirty ass dye that you don't take care of. That's another
Yes,
problem.
and actually, if you want to talk about that too, like I have chamber hones. So one of the finer grit chamber hones, I can't remember what they go up to, but just enough to clean the crap out of the dyes. So I rinse out the dye body, especially if you start getting marks on your brass, which can happen. Marks on your brass from that brass that gets collected or gunk that gets collected in the dye body. It's going to happen.
And it'll
Uh,
go in the chamber too. So
yep.
mhm.
And I spray them out, and I do this routinely too. I'll spray it out with brake parts cleaner, and then I'll take one of those ball chamber hones, flex hone, put it in a drill, spray it down with rem oil, make sure it's nice and wet, run there a couple passes, really easy, and it cleans it up. It's the dye body is hard enough that that's not going to affect, like you're not going to enlarge the dye from just running that fine ball honing out of there just to clean the crap out of it. I'll dry it out again with brake parts cleaner, and then that dye's good.
Yeah, we never honed it just because I'm too anal retentive about changing anything. But we have ultrasonic cleaners, and we just let the ultrasonic cleaner go after it, and we can throw a bunch of them. We just disassemble everything, throw it in there, and then we're done. We'll throw it back in there and let it go. But especially for like pistol, depending on if it's a good, I used the Lee ones forever, but man, if they're not perfect, they'll scratch the ever living shit out of your brass. So you've got to be careful there. And then
I've had the same Hornady, I think a nitrided die or carbide 9 mil die for the last like 15 years, and I clean it every once in a while. But that thing has just been unstoppable,
you
and
know
I've never had any issues.
you know what we need to do is you need to send me a couple of your dies, and I'll take a couple of mine. We need to nitride them because we can nitride, and
Ooh.
I want to see what it does. Because the only issue with nitride is it has to get super super freaking hot.
Yeah.
Uh, but I don't think that it would hurt. I don't think it would hurt dies at all. So we might have to try that. Oh, it'd be slicker than freaking snot on a doorknob though.
Maybe SAC nitrides their dyes. I kind of want to. I think they do, or there's a coating that they do for their dyes.
LC or nitride,
Yeah.
because it doesn't really add. You might have to go a little bit over because you are adding, some material to your die. But I don't know. It'd have to be something we'd have to mess with and see. But I'm sure if you did it, man, it'd run like a son of a gun. Because I know, like on actions, like all the defiances and stuff that we get, we nitride. Like,
Mhm.
man, they run so much better. And then Remington 700 actions, we nitride those, either the bolt or the action or both. But even if you just do the bolt, man, they run a ton better.
Yeah. Short Action Custom on their website says made from 17-4-1150 stainless steel and then nitrided to obtain the utmost lubricity. So it is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta imagine that's more for not collecting debris and galling your brass rather than it is, minimizing lubing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it does a little bit of everything, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
easier to clean out. Yeah, yeah, that one. Yeah, I mean that seems like that'd be legit.
But that dies $300.
Yeah. Well, nitriding and everything else, it just adds money to it. And having you gotta have it super tight. Your tolerance has got to be tight if you want a good one. And that's one issue that I've had with like that Forester, that new the dang body moves and not the bullet. I can't remember what it's called. It's a coax or whatever the heck it is. But I've had issues with the part of it moving, and I think I just need to go back to the drawing board and read on how to make it not do what it's doing. I don't know.
Oh, and on dies, I use bushings. I don't use non-bushing dies. I use bushings for everything.
It depends for me. It depends on what I'm reloading. If it's one of my hunting rifles, if it's one of my match rifles, I'll definitely use bushings. But my 223, my ARs, I don't use bushings. I just get a good match set of reamers. At the end of the day, like, I guess you guys and gals that are listening got to decide how accurate you really want to get. And you can go down rabbit holes. I mean, if you talk to the old bench rush shooters, those guys were freaking crazy anal retentive. They'd weigh their each brass and they'd weigh the primers and they
Yeah,
were down deep holes, but they were
that's
shooting.
that's a futile effort to me.
Yeah. At the end of the day, and we can agree to disagree or whatever. I tell everybody it's the Indian, not the arrow. You can spend as much time as you want in the reloading room trying to perfect it, which is great. It will help you a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's not gonna make you go from 20th to first. That's going to be you understanding what your rifle does, reading wind, understanding what needs to happen of you behind the rifle engaging. I think, in my opinion. Oh, maybe you got a different one, Matt, but
To a point, I think mediocre ammo will get you maybe to the top third, but the issue nowadays with competitive shooting is everything is won or lost by a point. So if they stick a sub MOA target out there, your chances of hitting it with shitty ammo are probably not. So that's how I view it. It depends on what you want out of it. If you want to win, you got to come up with winner results. That's it, and everything has to be in check because if you're not producing good results yourself, like you're saying, and your gear and your ammunition isn't at that top level, then the guy next to you, his will be. And that's the life I live right now.
Yeah. So, but the top 2%, 3%, that's 1% of shooters, less than 1% of shooters. So you got to understand where you're at in the game too, and trying to figure that out. But I don't know. Hopefully these podcast episodes, I think me and Matt probably need to do some videos of us reloading some stuff to kind of let you see, some of the basics of how we do things, because that question is asked a lot. There's a lot of videos out there. Some are great, some are horrible. Some people are just so hard to follow along with. It's not even funny. But at the end of the day, you've got to figure out where you are on this path, this journey you're on, and figure out what your next step is. But definitely reloading is definitely going to put you in a different bracket when it comes to doing some of this stuff. So it's something you need to think about. Anything else you think we need to hit on before we get out of here?
I think we've covered actually a lot of stuff. So I think I'm good. I've said my piece on this for now.
One of our new partners that we are going to work with over 2025 is Born Primitive. I am going to give them a shout out. If you want pants that are like phenomenal at competing, at even just walking around being comfortable in, or clothing, they've got Born Primitive Tactical, Born Primitive, and then they have Born Primitive Outdoors. So go check them out. We have a code there. It's LRT15. So if you see something you like, use the code. Hey, get something off. Doesn't do anything for us. Just helps you guys and gals get a code off, LRT15. The regular Born Primitive, if you want to get your wife something cool, they got some phenomenal leggings, clothing, that kind of stuff.
Jess bought some of their tactical pants. She wears them for matches. Loves them. Like the only pair that she has liked so far. And she has either I bought them or she's bought them from all those big kind of outdoor and hunting and all that. So yeah. And then my Christmas sweater that I wore last week was a Born Primitive Christmas sweater. So I mean,
yeah, they're good friends of ours. They're going to be here on the show. I was just texting them before we get on this. Navy SEALs created it. Navy SEAL still running it. Man, those guys and gals have gone down rabbit holes to figure out what the best shit is. So good stuff.
They like wearing tight pants. I've seen it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait.
Yeah, they're good. They're good shit. But yeah, they're probably one of my new favorite clothing. For everything else. We just went on an elk hunt with them, and man, it was a good time. But anyway, thank you all for listening. If there's a question about this episode or anything else, DM us, Instagram, Facebook. We appreciate you all for listening. And until next time, hopefully you can get some time in your loading room and spin up a good recipe. Thanks, everybody.